Hello and welcome to another episode of Country Fried, bringing you the best country music conversations, and today is no exception. My name's Ryan Harmon, and I'm feeling just a little bit under the weather this week, but we're going to get through it. It's worth it for country music after all. And before we go any further, I'd just like to thank you for the great response to last week's episode with Marty Rabin of Shenandoah. If you haven't heard it yet, check it out at facebook.com/AETNTV. And Ken Burns' country music is almost over, but you can still go watch it online. Head on over to aetn.org/countrymusic for more information. Well, now that we've got our housekeeping out of the way, I've got a good one for you today. As big of a country music fan as I am, I'll be the first one to admit that I don't know everything, and there's nothing I enjoy more than learning about something or someone that I should have already known about. In the case of Barbara Fairchild, I knew who she was, of course, and I knew some of her songs, of course, but I didn't know that she was such a prolific songwriter with a lot of history in the music business. And of course, Barbara was also nice enough to sit in on the Talkin' Country panel for a couple episodes, and she was fantastic. Make sure you don't miss those. Again, aetn.org/countrymusic for more information about that. Barbara was born in Arkansas, nominated for a Grammy for Best Female Country Vocal Performance for the classic Teddy Bear song. She worked with legendary producer Billy Sherrill. I mean, the stories go on for days, and nobody can tell them like she can. So let's just jump right into my conversation with Barbara Fairchild, right here on Country Fried. Barbara, thanks for taking the time to do this today.
I am delighted to do it. Thank you for having me to talk. I like to talk.
Well, hey, me too. This is going to go well.
Okay.
So let's start out from the very beginning. You were born in Arkansas, right?
I'm from a little town called Noble, and it's over in the northeast corner of the state now. I have a plaque there in Hot Springs on the hall in the Hall of Fame.
Right.
But they actually put on my plaque that I was born in Leif, which is actually true, because that's where the closest doctor was.
Right.
And I think I'm one of my sister and I were born at the doctor's office, not, at home like our brother was. So I was a little shocked when I seen the plaque and it said Leif. I said, "Oh my Lord, the people in Noble are going to think I've disowned them."
They'll never forgive you.
Yeah. So I may have a benefit and change the plaque. But anyway, go ahead.
Well, and you started out very young doing music. If I'm not mistaken, your first single was released when you were 15 years old?
Yes, I lived in Noble. When I was a freshman in high school, my dad moved us to St. Louis.
Right.
And he was, through our lives, he farmed, sawmill, and drove a truck. I've told folks he'd go broke doing one thing, so then he'd do the other, and then, until he went broke in that. And so we actually moved to St. Louis when I was a freshman. And but I would sing, locally any chance I had. And so when we got up there, and it's interesting because there's always steps that lead you, where you're supposed to end up. And I started singing there locally, and got on a TV show called the Norval Dollar Show.
Right.
That came in, and it was there was a whole line of shows, most of them the Nashville shows, and Norval's show was in there. And so I became a regular on that, and I also went to a music store with some friends. Now, this was before I got on the TV show, but we were looking at guitars, and couldn't afford one, but didn't hurt to look, And they asked me if I would sing the man that run the record store, sing him a song. My friends went in there all the time. So I played the guitar, and I remember I sang, "Were You There When They Crucified My Lord?" And he said, "Boy, you have a wonderful voice." And he said, "I'd like to record you with a guy that teaches guitar lessons here. He's one of the finest guitar players in St. Louis." So I said, "Okay, great." So he arranged that, and then he played that tape for a man named Norman Weinstrower, who had a record label that he just kind of dabbled in this label.
Right.
But he had a huge record distributing business. And he, I think I recorded 6 songs, and he arranged a trip in Nashville. Were me and my dad and a lady named Ruby Van Oy that I met and become friends with, and she was teaching me to write songs. And so we had written a total, well, me, I'd only written 2 songs. Right. And she wrote a bunch before that. And we had a meeting there with Cap Records, which was kind of funny because I ended up recording for them later, but they turned me down that day.
they lived to regret it, I guess.
Well, and they said, well, you're a cute little girl and you sing good. We're just not looking for a cute little girl who sings good. And that the general thinking was if they spent a bunch of money on a kid and they didn't stay with it, they'd wasted their money. With the exception, Brenda Lee was very successful at that time. So Dad was so tired, he'd stayed up all night driving us there. And so he put his feet up and said, I'm going to sit here and rest. Y'all go ahead and walk around. You know, we were just looking at the sights on Music Row.
Right.
And this man came out of a building. We were taking a shortcut through the Decca Records parking lot. I had to go back to where Daddy was. And Ruby said, I think I know that man. And so we didn't have any better sense than to ask him who he was. And he said his name is Jerry Crutchfield. Well, she said, do you know Jan Crutchfield? He said, that's my brother. And her and her sister had been there and pitching their songs, you know, and visiting publishing companies. And Jan had actually taken some of their songs for Cedarwood Publishing. So I think that's why Jerry took the time to listen, because he probably figured they have to be pretty good if my brother's been interested, you know.
Right.
So he said, well, I was going to lunch, but I'll take the time, just we'll go back in, let me hear what you got. So we played these records I'd recorded in St. Louis, and we had another, and one of the songs I'd helped out of the 2, and this girl, a local singer in St. Louis, had recorded that, so we played that one. He didn't seem real impressed with that song. And then I played the guitar and sang one that we'd just written.
Right.
And so he said, I like this one song. And he said, and I like your voice. So if you'll go home and write me 7 more as good as this one, then come back. So in 2 months, we went back with 16. And he signed us as writers to his publishing company, signed me to a management contract, and that's how it started.
So when you're that young, do you go into it thinking, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life, or do you just go into it thinking, hey, this is kind of what I'm interested in right now? Did it seem like a long-term thing, or did it seem at that time like it was maybe like, okay, this is going to be fun for a while, and be able to do something I love to do?
Well, I started singing around the house at 4, and I sang on stage when I was in the 1st grade. So I think I was 5 or 6. Maybe I was in 2nd grade. I'm trying to remember. But Mama had made me this little blue formal, and you know they'd have these carnivals once a year,
right?
And they would have a king and queen from each grade. So they had them in the elementary, and then they had the high school. So they'd crown one from the elementary side of it, and then the senior, you know. So me and Danny Shields were actually crowned. Now, it wasn't we were special. It's just our class raised more money.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Hey, it's all about the
So
money.
that's how we got that crown. That's right. And Mom had made me this little blue formal, and I sang Easter Parade, and Here Comes Peter Cottontail. That was what I sang in the talent show. And I could remember standing up there, and that dress was just trembling because I was so scared. But that was it. I want to be a singer. And that's what I always wanted to do. And so I was in that talent show. I can't remember now how many years before I finally won. But I was persistent. So I was still in the elementary somewhere, you know, but I think I won $15 or something, you know. But no, it's what I always wanted. I always wanted to be a singer.
Well, you mentioned being persistent. It seemed like that was kind of a theme
throughout the early days of your career? Because, like you were saying, you said, "I like this song. Just write me 7 more like it," and you came back with 16. I believe that's pretty persistent.
Oh yeah, and those girls, I mean, those ladies were good songwriters. So, and Ruby was teaching me to write songs, and boy, I will forever be grateful because I really, I don't know if I would have had the career without the songwriting.
Right.
And and I tell folks all the time. I said, look, I said, and just and what we were talking about in the show today, it's a gift, and it's a joy to do. There's so many aspects of music, and just like Merle Haggard saying it saved my life and all this, and it can change the direction. When people are going in the wrong direction, and I think it's a God thing. But it's so incredible how your life can go, and just like I said, the circumstances of how we're born and raised are not necessarily a detriment to how your life can go, and we see that in these stories of the stars in country music and all, and my life has been so rich because of it. We've all have trouble. We all go through stuff. But, I look back, and I've not had the kind of career that Dolly has or that Barbara Mandrell had. I really am happy with my career. I'm happy with my life. And I don't know that I would have the life I have today that I enjoy so much if I'd had that kind of career.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Because there is a price to pay. There's a lot of benefits, but there's also a lot of sacrifice to have a career like that. And I couldn't be happier.
Well, and your career certainly is something that a lot of people would envy. I mean, don't sell yourself short at all here.
I'm not taking anything away from I've been blessed and all that, but I just kind of like where I'm at.
Right.
And like where I've been. Because I think, all of it, that's just kind of the joy when you look back on life and you look at things you've been through. And I think I love people. And you'll have folks that, I think we make deposits in people's lives. And you'll have friends, sometimes you'll think, man, as long as I live, we're going to stay in touch. And then you don't, for whatever reason.
Right.
But boy, you look back on those people and think, man, I'm sure glad that I had a chance to know that person. And so life is just real interesting to me. And so I'm really grateful for mine.
Well, and you were talking earlier about, speaking of interesting lives and interesting stories, you mentioned the country music documentary, the Ken Burns special that we're running. There's a scene in that documentary where they cover George Jones in the studio with Billy Sherrill.
Oh, yeah.
Recording He Stopped Loving Her Today.
Yeah.
And Billy Sherrill is one of those guys that just seemed to get the best out of everybody that he worked with. And I know you got the chance to work with him.
I did.
And talk about being able to work with a producer like that.
Well, and of course, Jerry Crutchfield was a wonderful producer, too. And we worked together. But there was and I love him. I mean, to this day, he's wonderful. But in these songs that we wrote, I would do the demos of them. And there was a song called Love is a Gentle Thing. And what they do is the publisher then will send those out, like they'd put out a sheet of who's recording. And it's who the producer is and who the artist is. And so they send songs for consideration to these publishers or producers and artists and stuff. And so Jerry sent some stuff over there, and Love is a Gentle Thing was one of those songs. Well, Billy loved that song. And so he told Jerry, every time he'd see Jerry, he'd say, you need to let me have Barbara over here, and I'll record that song, because I love that song, but it doesn't fit any of my artists.
Right.
And now Jerry was really thrilled. But we're pretty happy where we are, because I was recording for that Cap label that turned me down at that time. And so, I was 17 when we made that change, because I couldn't sign my contract. My daddy had signed it because I wasn't old enough.
Right.
And so Jerry said, I'm gonna wait. I'm gonna see how serious he is. Because if he keeps talking to me about it, we'll make the switch. But I'm gonna wait and make sure he's not just talking. Right. So every time he'd see him, he'd bring that up. And so once Jerry was convinced that he meant business, then, they got me out of one contract and I was in another one, so I don't know if they had to pay for it or the other people just ready to let me go. But it was just amazing. And Billy, he did produce some of the stuff that I did, and he is wonderful. He had a real gift in that studio of just making you feel really, at ease. And he knew what he was talking about. And of course, so did Jerry. So I was just honored that I had a chance to work with both of them. And of course, Jerry was a friend. And Lord, how do you ever, you can't thank him enough, what I'm saying, for just recognizing that we had some abilities there, and he opened that door for,
right.
And so I'll be forever grateful. And he wrote, some of the stuff that I did, and he was just wonderful. But Billy was special too.
Now, when you did the Teddy Bear song, were you still with Billy at that point as a producer?
So Jerry actually produced that one.
Okay.
I think I need to go back and look for sure, but I think that Jerry did that album, that's something you know what? I'm just almost positive that Jerry produced it, but I will have to go look that up. And but I didn't, I love that song. And I was telling the folks earlier, it was written by two friends of mine. And and I was still living in St. Louis. I didn't move to Nashville till I had a hit because I didn't want to go down there and starve. And so I didn't want to be a starving artist. And Don Earl and Nick Nixon, and Nick had a band and was a real loved entertainer in St. Louis area, great singer. And we sang a lot of stuff together. And so they were always playing me songs they wrote, but they didn't necessarily fit me. And so we're working on this album. It was my third album, and it's called A Sweeter Love, was going to be the title. And Jerry said, let me play this little song that Don and Nick wrote. I know Jerry's producing this because, we were listening to the songs. He said, so he plays me Teddy Bear. And I said, oh my goodness, now we're getting ready to go in the studio, so I only have time to learn it. And I said, I love that song. I said, don't play that for anyone else. Then I found out he'd played it for everybody but me, and it'd been turned down by so many people. And Don and Nick never played me that song. You'd think they would be a natural. They'd play me that one. And because it was just such a special song, And now later, some of the same artists that turned it down put it in their albums. Because back in those days, they would put hit songs by other people in their
right.
albums.
Kinda
now,
like
they wouldn't dream of doing that now, but back then, they thought it helped the sale of their albums to have those titles in it,
Right. Kind of like the label that turned you down and then said, oh, no, we want you.
Yeah, right. Something caused them to want me. I don't know what. And I, the songs I recorded on that one, we wrote. And there was one called "Remember the Alimony," and it was a play on words because "Remember the Alamo," but it was. You want to hear a little of it? Here, say.
Oh yes.
Where it said, let's see. The chorus was, "Remember the alimony. Your alibis are getting stale and phony. I don't want to give you no trouble, but next month it better be double. Or I'm sending in the man in the blue serge suit 'cause I want my alimony. So,
Three chords in the truth, right
yeah,
there.
her husband, I tell you, my friend Ruby's husband was the inspiration for so many of them cheating songs. Lord have mercy. He gave us lots of material. They
Well,
end up divorced eventually, but she hung in there for a long time, and we wrote a lot of songs inspired by him.
Well, hey, somebody's got to live it. And it's better that somebody else
That is
instead
a
of
good
us, right?
title right there. Somebody's got to live it. That ought to be a song.
Well, I'll tell you what, let's write it later.
Okay. You write songs?
Yes, ma'am.
Well, okay.
And we'll write this one.
I'm telling you, yeah, we can do it by phone. How do you spell gotta? Oh, okay. I love that.
I think we're working out a music business hit right here.
I'm telling y'all, that is a good title right there. Don't y'all agree? Somebody's got to live it.
Our studio audience agrees.
It's either got to be gospel or something. Okay. We don't know. We'll see.
It's got to kind of straddle the line. I think that's how we'll get everybody. Is if we make
Yeah,
it a
maybe
little,
we can-
we'll make it a little Saturday
Well,
night and a little Sunday morning.
That's true.
Just
that
enough.
could have double appeal. Y'all remember when? You'll say, I remember when that idea came into being.
Yeah, this podcast is going to be short-lived. We're going to have too much money to count. So.
Oh,
No, but when you hear a song like that, like the Teddy Bear song, or when you write one, like Remember the Alimony, how do you know once you've got that song that you've got something?
well, I mean, I think there's a lot of really good songs that maybe are never hits either. You know what I'm saying? So it just depends how it's going to hit the public. I mean, you can write one and feel like, man, there's something really special about that. And it sure don't mean it's not special. But when they release it and put it out there, you know, it's timing and a lot of different things play a part in that, you know. And the DJ's got to like it enough to play it and, you know, all that. So I don't know what all of the ins and outs are of what makes that happen, because there's a lot of moving parts, you know, that come into play. But a lot of times, too, you can write a song and you're glad you wrote it, whether it's a hit or not.
Right.
And it can mean a lot, you know, a lot to people. Even just, it's just part of that gift of music and the joy of it. And, I mean, I like I started to say a while ago, I tell people, if you got a gift and you love it, enjoy that. Don't always think that the success thing is the real key to why this is special. You know?
Right.
Because it's just the just being able sometimes just to sing a song and it'll heal somebody's heart if you never sung it for anyone else. So enjoy the journey, regardless of how it turns out.
Yeah, that's what you hear people say so much. It's not the destination, it's the journey.
Right.
And since we're on that note, this would be a good time for one last question. You've been so gracious with your time. I really appreciate it. But what does country music mean to you?
Wow. Well, a lot to say. And I think just like the testimony of the people's lives in these shows, because, and like we were talking even after the show, about the impact that people's music has in everyday life for folks. Because, you know, a lot of times people don't know, they've been hurt. I mean, it's hard to get through this world without getting hurt in some ways. And I know, and as a Christian, and my husband and I, we do a lot of ministry, do a lot of counseling and praying with people. And there's a lot of people that are closed up. You know, sometimes they grew up in a real abusive home, or, you know, told to sit down and shut up, keep your mouth shut, or whatever. Then there's a lot of emotions and hurt sometimes that's in there that they don't know how to express it, don't know what to do with that. And sometimes just the song can turn that. And I mean, just like in Merle's case, you know, and Johnny, all the stuff that Johnny went through. I mean, and people sometimes they get ensnared by drugs and alcohol and things like that, and you know they always promise, the drug dealer always promises how good this is going to be, but yet it's a snare, it's a pit,
Right.
you know. But you know, June loved Johnny enough. I mean, she drew the line and held him to it, and eventually some sanity came into play when they said, one way or the other, we're going to stop you, and he said, okay. And so those music can do things like open a person's heart or their spirit to other things. And it can be for good or bad.
Right.
But,
Absolutely.
But that's country music, I think, is rich with those kind of values, hope, and things that opens the hearts of people. That's why I love country music.
Amen.
Okay.
That sounds like an answer to me. That's
right.
beautiful. Well, tell everybody where they can find you online and keep up with
Well,
new
I have a
music and
website.
shows.
Sometimes it's up to date, sometimes it's not. But it's barbarafairchild.com, so they can go there. They can find a lot of stuff about me on YouTube and Facebook. I didn't put it all up there. I found out stuff about me that I'm wondering, like, when did that happen? You know,
I don't remember that.
No, sometimes there's a bio and stuff in there, and I found out recently that I could edit that thing because it is so much stupid stuff in there, and I'm like, who wrote this? You know. And this lady had interviewed me, and her story, and she was reading some of that stuff, and I said, let me fix that. And so she was telling me that you can edit that. And I said, well, good, because there's a whole bunch of it that ain't even right, you know. So I was relieved to know that. But you can, there's people that's posted all kinds of music and stuff. My son, we went to Nashville. A friend of ours was killed in a car wreck, and we went to his funeral. And on the way back, all the way from Nashville, my son played music that I'd done. I done forgot about some of it. I said, where did you get this stuff? And he said, on Amazon. I'm like, some of that I think we did in a garage. How'd they get that? You know, so.
And you're saying, and how much do I get paid for this exactly?
I
didn't
don't
even know
think
it was
I've
out
got
there.
all that figured out yet. But anyway, there's a lot out there. And and there's even people named Barbara Fairchild that's not me. So they ain't necessarily singers, I don't think. But, you know,
And
there's
if they are, they're not
famous,
you.
There's a real famous woman that's a culinary thing. She's got big cookbooks and stuff, and we got the same name. And so I sent her a message and just said, I'd love to talk to you since we got the same name. I ain't heard from her. So,
She
and there
probably
was
thinks she's in
something
trouble.
on there. You ever see this thing that says what your worth is?
Yes, ma'am.
And I'm worth, I forget how many $1 million. I said, dear God, that ain't me. I said, they had my picture on. I said, they're going to be kidnapped. You know. So if anybody will listen, see that, it ain't me. You got to go after someone else. They got the wrong picture attached to that. And I don't know how you take that down.
I don't know that you can.
I know.
Maybe somebody will work on that for us. One of our loyal listeners will get on that for us.
Yeah, have them notify you and see how we can get that correct. I wish it was true, because, I mean, this person owns yachts and all kinds of stuff. We don't even have a boat. We got a lawnmower. Anyway, so I'll shut up.
No, you kidding me? This is one of the best interviews we've done so far. Barbara,
Oh.
thank you so much for doing this. This has been great.
Thank you. I enjoyed it.
Well, we could have easily talked for another hour. She was so gracious with her time, and it was really a pleasure talking to her. Be sure to check out barbarafairchild.com to keep up with everything she's got going on. And I'll admit, I've kind of fallen down on the job with the song that we were talking about writing together, but hopefully we'll be able to get that done. Who knows, we might be able to premiere it right here. Why not? I think that'll just about do it for me this week. As always, thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next week for another country music conversation right here on Country Fried.
Be sure to subscribe to us on your platform of choice, share this episode with your friends, and leave us a comment. We want to know what you think. I'm Ryan Harmon, and this is Country Fried, an AETN production. Find out more at aetn.org.